Thank you. I'll pass over now to Pavel and Hatis to get started with this next session. Thank you.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, first for coming here. Just maybe worth noting, 11th of November is also an event day in Poland, and this is our Independence Day, where we recover from the occupation after 150 years, and that happened 11th of November 1918. Let me start the presentation. Before we go, I just like to ask you to scan the QR code or go to the link provided on the very top and join the Mentimeter. Once you are there, please press the heart so I know you are there. There are still more attendees. I see that the hearts here. And if you want to participate in the session, it's good that you have to that platform. How this will be going today? So as I will be changing the slides on my screen, and this is what you will see on the main screen. This will also change your device, and sometimes you will see a question to which you are encouraged to respond. That can be a different type of questions. It can be you type a short text, or you pick a selection, or you put a finger on an image. Always you need to remember to press the submit button so that your answer is coming. And don't delay with that, because we have that the session is packed a lot, and we are not very much time. So if you can, just answer the question, press submit, then we run the session effectively. If you see the information that the presenter changed his slide, which is the message on the very top of the phone, you need to press to the go to slide button, because it means that you are stuck on the screen with a question to which you didn't submit an answer, so you just can skip that question and you can follow to the next slide. You can also use the Q&A button in Menti. There is a Q&A panel in the Bevy platform. So whichever you want, please use that one to ask your question. And you can press the heart on thumb up or down on the screen, to give your feedback during the session. So let's make a try. The first question is, where are you calling from? So it's where are you calling from today? Just put place a mark on the screen, press the submit button, and then we see it. I see that we have people from Europe, we have Middle East, but we also have America, which is probably quite early down there. So really appreciate joining that early of your time today. The topic for today is process automation revisited from chaos to structure, and the session initially was about process builder, but then we had the whole shift with other tools with record triggered flows, and it's even more into the landscape than we had previously. So these are some tips how you can manage this and how you should navigate with the variety of different tools. So this is about me, and it's said that the picture says more than thousands of words. Basically, I love dogs. I love wearing t-shirts with company logo. I love Salesforce, for which I became a Salesforce fan in 2006. And within the Salesforce, I particularly like flows. And this is what I'm going to tell you more about today. So that is about me. Now about you. So let's just give me a glimpse of what's your preference with process automation, and particularly what type of process automation have you used in the past 12 months. Whether you used workflow rules or process builder or Apex or flows. So interestingly to see people still using process builder, you're still using workflow rules. Some Apex developers, welcome to that. And we also see that there are people who are quite new to flows as well, and as people who are advanced to flows. So we have a big spectrum of attendees today. So I hope everyone will find something for themselves. Speaking of the evolution of the process automation, that there has been workflow rules, and if I looked into the release notes, into the historical release notes, it seems like they have been there forever, since the very beginning. This is quite powerful tool in terms of performance, but not much in terms of flexibility, because this is a simple if-then statement. And if you have multiple if-then statements, then you need to create multiple workflow rules for that. Then the next to the picture were flows, apparently, which allowed for the flexible logic, but there was no automatic triggering. So that happened only on the button of click on a button or link, or from visual force page. And the initial flows were not very much intuitive, which is probably the reason why people didn't use it widely. So then it's the time of the process builder, which has been here for a couple of years already, and it was a big change to workflow rules, because it allowed for multiple if-then statements. So you could create just one process builder with multiple conditions. And then this process builder developed, and there was more actions coming. It was also a possibility to start a flow from the process builder. So that was the first possibility where you could take advantage of the flow flexibility and the automatic launch from process builder. Also, flows themselves became more intuitive and more easy to use than before. And then the picture changed. So in winter 20, which is actually 3 years ago, there was a first type of flows that could launch themselves automatically, and there were scheduled flows that started on a schedule, like every day or every week or every month or so. And then just slightly after, I think that was a big revolution in process automation when there was an introduction of record triggered flows. It first started with the before save flows, and that was really fast tool to perform the same process automation like we had in process builder. And then we had after save flows, and basically those two flows covered everything that was achievable with process builder and workflow rules and more. So it's not a surprise, but perhaps it was, but it's not much of the surprise that Salesforce decided to retire workflow rules and process builder. And now we see that in a new orgs, you don't have the possibility to create new workflow rules. It's also planned to completely turn off process builder. And there are also plans to end the support of workflow rules and process builder at all. So this is safe harbor, obviously, as everything that's speaking about the future of Salesforce. But the takeaway for you, those who use workflow rules, those who use process builder, those who don't use record triggered flows, go with triggered flows. It's really the future. So let's see some examples. And first, I want to introduce you the company that we will be using today during the demo. It's a very simple company. It's a company that hires Salesforce consultants and then puts those consultants on projects to other companies. And they have a lightning page to for new applicants to register. When the applicants register, the applications are being reviewed in Salesforce and then either accepted or rejected. The design is also very simple. The company uses cases for the incoming applications. They use contacts for applicants, and they don't use person accounts. They use the model of one-to-one relationship with an account. So for each contact, they create an administrative account. And today we are after an initial pilot deployment, and we are in a process of agile development when we do the continuous improvement to our existing implementation. You are the Salesforce architect, and your role is to propose a scalable and future-proof solution. So, having said that, we have the first requirement. We have noted that when the cases are created, the case reason not always is populated, and that is not very much helpful with reporting. So the requirement is that when the case reason is not populated, then it should be automatically set as other. So let's see how this can be achieved with Salesforce. So we have our org, and we go to the section flows, and we create new flow. Very easy. If you never did this, don't be scared with the number of options that you can see here, because you don't need to use them all. Yeah. And first, we want to start with record triggered flow. This is the successor of process builder. So once we create the flow, we need to select an object. Yeah, so this is very much like we did in workflow rules or with process builder, and we will do our trigger on a case. Then we have the selection when we want the trigger to run. We want to run it when the record is created, and then we define the entry conditions. And basically, we want the flow to run when the case reason. As I start typing, I see the prompt. So when the case reason is blank, so this is this format, true, I want my flow to start. There is one more thing. I have a selection how I want to optimize the flow, either for fast field updates or actions and related records. And for this, I'm using the fast field updates because I will be updating the record that triggered the flow. So I'm selecting this, I'm clicking done. And then I have this plus button when I can select my action. I have a few actions to select, and what I want to do, I just want to update the triggering record. Just need to provide a name. So I say update reason, and then the field case reason should be other. And that's it. All I need, that's my flow is ready. I think it's even faster than the process builder. I need to give it a name. Save it, activate, and test. So we see today's cases, the list is empty. When I create new case, let's assume it's a web application. I only set the mandatory fields. I leave everything else empty. Maybe I just make a indication that this is requirement 1. I save it. And as you can see, when I created, the case reason has been automatically set to other. So very easy. And this is how you can start your journey with flows. Explanations what this flow means. We have two types of flows, and they are called before save flows and after save flows. And here you have the schema of the Salesforce order of execution. So you have all the actions that are being taken, and this is directly taken from Salesforce documentation, but I group them together. So as you can see, there are some groups of actions, and we have the initial load of the record, and then the very first action is before save flows. Then we have triggers. Then we have checking validation rules and duplication rules. Then we have a draft save to the database. So this is why we say the flow is before save. It's like before triggers. Then we have after triggers. Then we have all this process automation that we are familiar with. So all those assignment rules, auto response rules, workflow rules, process builder, blah, blah, blah. And then we have after save flows, rollup summary, calculating sharing rules, and post commit logic. So as you can see, these flows are happening either before nearly everything or after nearly everything. So the flows that I just created is the flow number 3. It's the before save flows. And they are very, very fast because there is no save, there is no recurrence. It's just assigning values to the record before it's even saved. And the takeaway number 2 is that wherever you want to update the same record that you trigger the flow, use the before save flows. Okay, so then we have another requirement, and we want to create the contact if the contact is not in the database. Yeah, so when we have new application, and people provide the contact details, the case is created. So we want this contact to be auto-created in the database. And it's not only creating the contact, we need to create a contact and the associated administrative account. So hence the first question to you, what would you do? Yeah, we have already one flow, and we are about to create some new process automation. Would you rather create a new flow or modify the existing one? Take a couple of minutes. Don't hesitate. Nobody knows what have you answered. You just aggregated information. And I see that the responses here are mixed, and actually it's quite a 50-50 with more towards the modify existing flow. And my answer to that is create new flow. Why? It's because we are creating records. So we are not updating the original record, or maybe not only updating the original record. We are creating new contact and new account. And for this, we use the other type of the flow, which is called for actions and related records, or the legacy name or the nerd name after save flow. And we have some entry criteria here. So basically, we run this flow when the case is coming from the web and when there is no contact on that case. And we have an email because we need to have something with which we will be looking for the records in the database. And also email is mandatory when we are creating the contact. And the flow is very simple. So after this entry criteria, we first are looking whether the contact exists in the database. If not, we first need to create the account. Why? Because we will need account ID to populate on contact. Second step, we create the contact. And the first step, we update contact ID, account ID on the case record. So let's make a quick demo, and you also can do this as well. You have the link when you go to the demo site. This is exactly this site. You need to press application form. After you finish, you just click on the back to Menti, and just don't hesitate. Start creating the cases. I have my case already populated, so I'm created a new application from Alex Dreamin. I'm providing an email address, and I put the information in the subject that this is requirement number 3. So I'm submitting the application. Going back to cases, and let's see what we have. So we have our first requirement that we created just a minute before, and I see my new application from Alex Dreamin. When I click on it, I see that the contact has been created, and also the administrative account has been created as well. This works, and we have another lesson from that. Whenever we want to make some actions on related records, such as creating related records or even creating non-related records, we can also use it, or we want to update related records, then we use after save flows. Okay, so then we have another requirement, and you may have not noticed that, but all those applications that are coming, they are not being assigned to the application queue. So there are assignment rules in the system, but apparently they are not working because there is a known issue with Salesforce that cases coming from the web do not trigger the case assignment rules. So the advice is to create a process automation for it. So again, we have another decision that we need to take, and now we have more options because we can create new flow, and it can be either the before save or new after save, or we have two flows already that we are about to modify. So let's see what are the options, and we see that majority says that we want to modify one of the existing flows, and I see that you are reluctant to creating new flows. Actually, my preference would be to create a new flow because it's independent on other flows, and we can use entry criteria to decide when the flow should start. And if we create just a new flow, it's very easy, very simple flow, because all we need to do is to just get the queue ID and assign an owner with the queue ID that we got from the previous element. And because this is actions and on the same record, we use before say flow. However, if we tested this, we would see that this wouldn't be working. So we make another try, and we change the flow to an after save flow. And that after save flow apparently works. Yeah. So the question is why? Why it didn't happen with the before save flow and it happens with the after save flow? And the answer is on the order of execution list. If we go back to this, then we see that there is assignment rules that happen in the after the draft save. So whatever we assign in the before save flow, which is position number 3, this has been getting overridden in the position number 9. So even if those assignment rules don't work because of the known issue, what Salesforce does, it assigns the default case creator in the step number 9. So for this, we need an after save flow to modify what was assigned in the previous step. And this is another takeaway, that wherever you are using these flows, you need to think about the order of execution. And you have to think even more than with Process Builder, because you have two types of flows, and they run at a different moment of the whole save operation. So you need to be aware what is taking place when. So I'm typing you a link to that picture. You can go after the session, download the sheet and use it, because it's very helpful, especially if something is not working as you would expect. Now we have time for the mid-session questions. I don't see any questions coming, neither here nor in the Q&A panel. So I'm moving forward. Then we have another requirement. Yeah, so the time is going, and we create new and new stuff here in Salesforce, and we want to provide also an alternate contact. Yeah, so in addition to the applicant contact details, we want to capture the details of an alternate contact. And exactly like we did before, if it's not in the database, we want to create a contact and account for this new person. So again, we have a decision to make. Let's forget about the before save flows, because this will be actions on related records here, because we will be creating contact and account. And we have already an existing flow that creates contact and account for an applicant. And all we need to do is create another contact and account for the alternate contact. So the question is whether we want to create new flow or modify existing flow. And I see that the responses are coming to modify an existing flow. And a vote on creating new flow. Don't be afraid. Yes, thank you. So let's see what we have here. So here we have the flow, and by the way, I didn't tell you, you have the thumbs up and down when you can express your your opinion on the flow, whether you like it or not. So at first we say we modify the existing flow, yeah, and we use this a process builder like approach when we have multiple criteria, and then we have some actions. We obviously have more flexibility in here, but basically the operation is the same. And at first we create an applicant, then we check whether there is an information about the alternate contact. And after that, if there is an information about the alternate contact, we need to check whether it's the same as the applicant or different. And if it is different, then we create the alternate contact. We also had to modify our entry criteria, because now we check not only that is coming from the web, but we check the conditions for contact, and we check the conditions for the alternate contact. And it's some and or statement, so it's not a very simple entry criteria. It becomes a bit more complicated. The question is, could it be done better? And let me skip that question and go directly to the conclusion. As you can see, we have duplicated elements here for get records and for create records. So every time we create an account twice and we create contact twice. And you may say, okay, not a big deal. But if you think that each of the create record may have their own triggers that will be firing during the create operation, then basically all those number of triggers and statements will be multiplied by 2. So the good approach, the best practice when thinking about flows is that you group the database operations together and you like keep away from the limits. So I modified that flow and now it's a little bit differently. So I grouped all those operations together. So at first I'm capturing both contacts. If I'm getting 2 contacts, then I need to create a collection variable. Then I need to rescan through the collection. If there is no account, I'm creating an account as a variable. I'm adding this to the collection. I'm creating contact as a variable. Then I repeat the same for the alternate contact. After that, I'm creating both account records, and then I need the account IDs to be put on contact. So I need to rescan the collection of the account records, get the contact IDs from them, put them on contacts, and then create contacts as the last second last operation, which is number 6. I'm creating contacts, and then I'm updating IDs on my case record. This, however, is not an ideal either, because we are optimizing for the database operations, but the flow becomes much more complicated. We have a big number of elements. We have several looping through the collections, and we have multiple decision elements. The question is, can we do this differently? And the answer is, okay, so let's try and create a new flow. Here we have already one flow for create contact, and then we just clone the flow. The flow for creating the alternate contact would be very much like the first one. There are some changes which I highlighted in orange that you need to do in the original flow, and you have your new flow. What is interesting, now we have again very simple criteria, just 3 conditions. And the good thing is that when we have only contact and no applicant, only applicant and no alternate contact, then only flow 1 will trigger. If we have both, then we have just both flows triggering, but nothing in addition to what we already did with our first approach, the process builder like. So skipping the show time, you have to believe me, it works. The takeaway from this is that we need to split the logic, or we may split the logic if we have more complex logic, and we gain the simplicity. And we use enter criteria to control which flow executes. Yeah, because if we use this enter criteria smart, then we can have multiple flows, and only the flows that we actually need to fire, they will trigger. Okay, so now it's the decision, and it's really an architecture decision, and there is no good and bad answer. So whatever you select here is a good answer, because it's a balance. You can have one flow, you have fewer DML statements, but the logic is more complex. On the other hand, you can create multiple flows, where you have more DML. So this is the price that you pay for the simpler logic. But what you gain is a simplicity in logic, and also when you create those new flows, it's potentially easier because you are not affecting your existing flows, you're just adding new flows. And this is the take of the Salesforce, that you don't need to be worried about multiple triggers per object, because with process builder, it was really the principle that we wanted to have as few process builders on an object as possible, because they created recurrence. And also the initialization phase of the process builder was quite significant. So it had a big impact on the performance. And with record triggered flow, it's a much better, I would say. So you have the entry criteria, and you can decide which flows trigger. So not all your triggers will fire every time. And also the initialization is less amount of impact. So even if you are starting multiple triggers, then the performance is still reasonable. And you can have the decision elements inside the flow, so you don't create very granular flow like you would do this with workflow rules. You don't create one mega flow like you would do it with process builder. You create something in between, and this is really a good approach. And this is something that you can remember, that multiple flows per objects are good. It's not bad to have multiple flows per object. So if we have multiple flows per object, the question is how we manage this growing complexity. So I'm here just to asking you to provide some tips and tricks, what you do to help manage this growing complexity with process automation. Documentation, definitely, it's a must. Yes, it's a king. We won't be covering the documentation here in this session, though. Naming convention, yeah, this is something that really helps to navigate. Try to reuse flows wherever possible. Yes, and you can. Well, yes, you can either modify the existing flows if you know it's a related logic, but if it's new logic, like we had with the contact and alternate contact, you can clone the flow, or you can use subflows. Yes, thank you for this. So then you keep your complexity under control. So here is a couple of tips that you can use, and some of them came on as the ideas on the previous slides. Some are new, so just let me know which of those you've heard about, which of those you hadn't, or maybe you are familiar with them and you are using this on an everyday. So we see the naming convention, flow trigger explorer, customized list views, subflows. I think that it's a one answer only. Yeah, we have a couple of more coming. So we see that people are using you are using naming convention, you are using subflows, and that's really helpful. So let's take a quick look at this. With the naming convention, the rule number one is that you have to choose your own naming convention. So there are some tips on flowing around that you can use, but you pick your own. And the rule number two is if you pick the naming convention, please stick to that. Yes, because it helps. What I do, I start with the triggering object name, then I have the before and after to differentiate between before save, after save flow, and then I put the action, create or update, and then put some description of that of that flow. And in the past, I used the symbols so that I have my before flows sorted before after save flows, but it's not that much very important today because now we have list views. So list views is something that, that you can really utilize more. If you clone the default list view, you realize that there is a number of fields that you can add, such as which is an before save or after save flow, or what is the type of flow. It's like a schedule flow. You have the triggering object. You have, the description, all that stuff that you can have here. And you can pin that list. So you see that whenever I go to flows, I have my list of flows for just for the demo session. But if I select my all flows, then it's a big, really large number of flows here. And even in addition to that, we have Flow Trigger Explorer. So this is another tool that helps you navigate in with this number of flows. And now you see how many flows I have created in my demo org, because I'm running multiple sessions on the same orgs. I have multiple flows and they really don't interfere one with another. So you can select an object and you can select the action like created or updated or deleted. So quite a lot. And you see also the before save flows and you see the after save flows. Yeah. And another thing you can do is you can edit the order. So those flows here are in the order they will be executed. And if you don't select the triggering order, this can be somewhat randomly. It's not randomly, it's by the last modified date or last created date. But you can edit the order. So you can say, okay, I want this flow to run first. Yeah, so I just drag it here. And when I'm saving, I'm being asked about the trigger order. So when I update this, I'm just putting a trigger order on this flow. And it's also accessible here if I go to my properties and I go to advanced. I have my trigger order here. Yeah, so you see it, my trigger order 50. So we have our list view. We covered our trigger explorer, and this is the trigger order. So whenever you don't specify the trigger order, they will fire like in the middle. So if you specify the trigger order between 1 and 1000, those flows will execute first. Then you will have all your flows when you don't define the triggering order. And then you have flows when you define the trigger order 1001 or more. And the thing is that if you don't specify the trigger order, it's also good. Yeah. So even though you have this trigger order, you don't need to use it. So just use the triggering order when it matters, because if you just use it and it doesn't matter, and somebody comes to the org and may think, okay, what is the reason for this flow to fire before the other flow? Yeah, you don't need to specify this. You just have this flexibility with this 1 to 1000 and 1000 to 2000 that you can decide, okay, I want my flow to run before all the other flows, or this flow, it really should happen after all the other flows. So you have this even bigger flexibility. And the last thing that you can use is if you have a repetitive logic, you can create subflows, and you can call that subflow from the original flow. It can be used for both. So if you have a piece of logic that you want to use in more than one place, but even if something is to be used in one place, it's sometimes good to use it, because then you have your flow simpler, you have less elements, and if you have some group of functionalities or group of actions that you can logically separate, you can separate this in a subflow, and then you have a simpler logic. Again, you need to balance. Yeah, you need to make your decision whether the flow we see on the left, if it was just one, I think it's clear enough to keep it in one flow. But if we had two flows like we had in our example, a similar way, it's good to put the reusable logic in a subflow. So the tip number 10 is using the subflow for reusable logic and for keeping the simplicity. So I couldn't cover everything, even though I eaten more time than I was allocated, and I had really hard time to fit this in this 40-minute session. So we didn't look at the cases when the triggering order matters. We didn't speak about the bulkification challenges in mass operations. There is also a possibility to use the asynchronous path for making actions on related records, schedule trigger flows, error handling. For this, I had a session yesterday, so you can watch it on YouTube. So it's really a lot to learn. So stay tuned. Maybe I will have another session covering one of those topics. Coming that to the end, looking for the questions from the audience. I don't see anything on the Q&A panel. I see a question from many. Why is rules thoughts on this, Mark? Mark, out of curiosity, what's your view on naming convention for flow labels? Mine has recently started to change due to visual limits on how many characters get displayed for screen flows in Slack. Good question, Mark. I have no point of view on this. I should have, because at PwC everyone has point of view, but I don't have this. I haven't been aware of that limitation in Slack. So definitely something that that we need to dig down. Mark says, I'm working towards keeping the label names short and the script and focusing my naming conventions on API names primarily. That makes a lot of sense. I've seen that when I'm naming my screen flows, that label appears on the flow window. So sticking with a naming convention when you use the object and action is not necessarily the best way. How would you overcome a problem when using subflows? If I pass a record from a lookup field, then subflow doesn't have access to related records of the record passed. How can I resolve this? Yeah, so then it means, so you can do two things. You can pass a record and a collection of records. Yeah, so there is no limitation on how many parameters you pass to your subflows. So if I wanted to have related records in my subflow, I would probably create two input variables, one for an as object, a record variable, another one for a collection variable, and pass those two into the subflow. Another option, obviously, is that you can use the get record within the subflow, but then you create this additional get statement, which is again against the best practice, yes, because we want to limit the number of database operations. Follow-up questions and best practices for dealing with situations where external vendors need to write flows as well to internal admin, how best to coordinate their work. Have they create separate flows, co-maintain one larger one, best practices. It's a tough question, Andrew, and we face this sometimes on a project when we deliver to clients. So we are in this situation of external vendors. Typically, what we ask the client is not to do their own stuff without coordinating with us, but it's a big governance question. Yeah? So if there are internal projects that needs to happen in parallel, then it needs to be some kind of the architecture forum that covers both and analyze the dependencies. It's that there should be an architect that overlooks both projects, external and internal. Yeah, and I see that Mark is sharing my my point of view. Yeah, so it's not a good answer. Maybe a topic for another session. So thank you very much for this. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your patience that you stay a little bit longer than anticipated. This is if you want to stay with me in touch. And having said that, thank you for attending Automation Dreamin. Thank you for being with me today, and have a good time on the rest of the event. Thank you.